So welcome back, everyone. Welcome. Andrea, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'll just tell you one before I introduce her. Well, I will introduce her first and tell you a story. So Andrea Davis, Executive Director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. So we have gone international. We're in Canada now, in Nova Scotia. So be sure to go back and look on the map and find out where that is. I first saw Andrea on a Zoom. It was the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. It was a conference. I think it was during 2022. It was during COVID. And I said to myself, what? I was in Nova Scotia many years ago, but I never heard anything about this. And as I started to look at Patriots and Loyalists, I said, well, that's what that was all about when I saw her 3 years ago. It wasn't couched that way, but that's what it was. And so I really wanted to get her here so that she'd be more familiar in understanding the African diaspora throughout the Americas as well as Europe. And with that, I want to introduce the Executive Director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm clapping for myself, so I thank you. I appreciate that. So I had a bit of technical problems today, but because my ancestors, our ancestors were resilient people, we managed to get through to get me on here to speak with you all the way from Nova Scotia, from Birchtown. So my name is Andrea Davis, as you know. I am the executive director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. I am also an 8th generation descendant of the Black Loyalists who landed in Shelburne, which was known as Port Roseway in 1783. I did not know this growing up in Shelburne. We never learned anything about this in school. We learned about all other histories, but we did not learn about the Black Loyalist story in school here in Shelburne, Nova Scotia. I am and have ancestral ties and relationships within the communities of Birchtown, Shelburne, and other distinct communities. There are 52 distinct communities in Nova Scotia, and I have connections with most of them. I also have 2 entries from the Book of Negroes. So Jupiter Farmer and his wife, Venus Farmer, were generation 1 to me, and I am generation 8. I also have an entry of Titus Milliner as well from the Book of Negroes. So this new information to me within the last couple of years was actually very warming to me, especially since I was born here in the community, but knew very little about the ancestral ties that I had to this vast story of the Black Loyalists in Nova Scotia. So here where I am, I'm actually in Shelburne. The museum is not open today. The center is not open today. But here in this particular place, I would just like to let you know that we can go on to the next slide if you don't mind going on to the next slide. I just wanted to talk to you just a little bit about where Nova Scotia is located. And it is located in the Mi'kmaq, which is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. But I also like to acknowledge those who came here as settlers as well to this native land, to Nova Scotia. As migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands because of the transatlantic slave trade and enslavement. We pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin who have been here in Canada for over 400 years. We thank them and their descendants for their contributions towards transforming systems in ways that actually promote and foster a sense of belonging, harmony, and safety. So I hope you can still hear me. You still hear me?
Andrea, one moment. There's some technical difficulties, so let me try and get this fixed in a moment.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm on to the slide that you actually just had brought up. It was in regards to 1775. But before I start to talk about that, I also just wanted to let you know that the Black Loyalist Heritage Center is not a place where artifacts come to die. It's actually quite a vibrant center. We have staff that are descendants of the Black Loyalists. We have a board of directors as well who are also descendants of the Black Loyalists. We're thriving. We are a place where the community comes to feel safe, to learn, to envision what their future looks like. We put on lots of educational programs, as well as opportunities for people to come and learn about their genealogy. So it's actually quite a big center that thrives on ensuring that the community is aware of their roots. But we also reach out to other places, as I was just introduced here. We also reach out to other places in the United States and internationally, as well as far as Sierra Leone, in which I will tell you a story later. I had an opportunity to speak with the mayor of Sierra Leone a few years ago, so that was quite exciting for me. So I don't see my slides on the screen, but I do have a slide for 1775, which starts to talk about the American Revolution. I'm not here to convince you that that did or did not happen. We all know historically that the American Revolution began in 1775, and it was around that time in November that the Dunmore Proclamation offered freedom to anyone enslaved or indentured to an American rebel to cite and to side with them. This offer would later include and be expanded to land. The biggest part of that, of course, was freedom. After the American Revolution in 1783, we know it comes to an end and the British evacuate the United States. It was at this time that the Book of Negroes, or the document itself, was created, registering Black Loyalists who left New York. I had an opportunity to present or to be a keynote speaker. I believe it was last year at France's Tavern Museum in New York, and I got to speak about the Birch trials. I also got to speak about the fact there were notable people in history who went before the commission in an attempt to secure their freedom. And I presented stories to that regard. It went over very well. I was very excited to see in New York that there was an exhibit that actually spoke to the Black Loyalist story. So when I arrived there, I was greeted very well by the public, as well as historians and members of the Francis Tavern Museum committee. So it was actually quite an exciting trip for me to be able to do that. So in 1783, after the American Revolution, as I was just saying, over 3,000 Black Loyalists are relocated to the United States, from the United States, excuse me, to Nova Scotia. And when they came, half of them landed in Port Roseway, where I was born, in Shelburne. And so it shows that the maps have shown us that approximately over 1,000 landed in Shelburne. And it sprung up overnight, actually, with that arrival of the Black Loyalists. But with that huge population overnight when they landed, there was definitely issues in terms of assimilation and in terms of racism and in terms of trauma and pain and horror stories that I have learned and heard about and read about in history over the years. And it was just beyond believable that the Black Loyalists fought for the British with the hopes of freedom, with the hopes of land, with the hopes and opportunities of a new start. And when they arrived in Shelburne, they were not provided with any of that, and those promises were left, of course, unfulfilled. The muster roll in Shelburne at that time showed approximately 5,900 white people, and approximately 2,700 Black people. And approximately 1,521 of those Blacks were recorded as being free. So it would have been challenging for Blacks to be free Blacks to be in the same community as those who were not free. And so I can't imagine how that would have looked. We do talk about that in our circles at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center and how that would have affected the mental, health and the mental illness of those that are in the community at that time. In Birchtown itself, there were over 200 Black families, and approximately 70 families of those numbers I gave you lived in Shelburne. So I just want to point out that there are 52 distinct communities in Nova Scotia, Black communities in Nova Scotia, but the area in which I was born and lived, there are two distinct communities, and we are the only location in Nova Scotia that has both Shelburne and Birchtown as being both Black communities, and it still exists like that today. So I'm going to see if I can move on to my next slide, which I did provide a bit about 1784 with the muster roll. And I want to point out the image, if you have it on your screen, that is called the woodcutter. And this image was done by William Booth. It was a watercolor or water painting that was done in 1788. And this was an image that I observed when I went to New York. And when I saw this, I had seen this on the wall with the information, I automatically felt happy just because I know that this is something that we pride on. It's a universal painting, oil painting or water painting, excuse me, that has been something that we prided ourselves on. And so historians last year, when we had a conference, looked at the photograph and were trying to just imagine everything from the hat that this gentleman is wearing to the type of clothing and also to the type of machinery that he would be using to cut that wood. So it was dissected and explored, but the image itself is very, very powerful to show you the type of work that the Black Loyalists would have done when they landed in Shelburne. So I just like to speak a little bit about when the Black Loyalists arrived. Freedom, as they would want to have known, was soon far reality or far reach to equity for the Black Loyalists. Land grants were delayed. Smaller portions of land were offered in the worst locations. And we talk about that as well historically at the center in regard to land entitlements in the community. Pit houses were the only shelter. A pit house was a home that the Black Loyalists would have lived in for up to at least 10 years with a hole that would have been dug in the ground, surrounded by a rock foundation, and logs or tree trunks would have been used to cover that hole with pieces of moss squeezed in between the logs to keep them, I guess, dry in the winter and cool in the summer. So we do have on site at the Black Loyalists a replica of what that pit house would have looked like. And we talked about how it would have been home to the Black Loyalists for up to 10 years. It would have been difficult for the Black Loyalists to build traditional homes just due to the fact that lumber was scarce and it was used to build other homes, which still stand, by the way, in Shelburne, Nova Scotia. A lot of those old homes are still there, and a lot of them have not been kept up. And so as a result of that, the Black Loyalists likely would have helped to build those homes as well. So some people in Shelburne at that time, because food was scarce and jobs were scarce, they would refer to it as scarcity. Instead of Shelburne, it was known as scarcity. And so with that being said, there was also this whole thing about Blacks forced into as indentured servitude, excuse me, or indentured, put back into slavery or kidnapped or re-enslaved. And so there was all kinds of issues that were actually happening within the community within Shelburne, which of course built the tensions up quite high. Tensions were heightened due to a lack of labor for blacks, and blacks were taking jobs that were at lower wages than the white loyalists. And this caused a bit of an issue. If the slide for 1784 is up, it talks about, and you can see the image there, there was the first race riots in North America actually happened in Shelburne, Nova Scotia. And that was as a result, as I stated, just the lack of wages, higher wages, and also the fact that there was this preacher, David George. He established a church that was in the northern division of Shelburne, which we called Blacktown, or was called Blacktown at that time. He used to baptize everyone, black and white. He would preach to black and white. And as a result of that, the white loyalist, combined with the black loyalists taking lower wages for labor, the first race riots in I guess North America took place in Shelburne. And as you can see, rioting in this case took place for 10 days, which Black Loyalists being the primary targets. Anything that was reminiscent of the Black Loyalists, or homes, any businesses, anything that they would have had developed and created would have been burned and destroyed by the white Loyalists. Most families, of course, would have lost everything, including loved ones and children. The Black Loyalists fought hard, of course, with what they had, but they ended up being pushed, of course, back out to Birchtown. And so that's where a lot of the families became divided between the two places, Shelburne and Birchtown. And so, as you can see here in that image, it's quite powerful, just to show what the Black Loyalists would have gone through during that time in Shelburne. And today, as a descendant of the Black Loyalists, having gone away and come back, we can still see that there is reparations definitely have not been delivered, nor have any sense of belonging in some cases as well in the community. The economy is still, quite bad for the small town for Black families. The population definitely declined as well, to the point where almost 10 years later, in 1792, the Black Loyalists, signed up to go on about 15 ships to sail to Sierra Leone in Africa. And so Sierra Leone would be a place where I would also call myself home, or we're known as the Black Nova Scotian settlers, as they call the ones that did go there from Shelburne in 1792. Prior to that, and I'm looking at my slide here, there's an image, if you have it on your screen, of Thomas Peters. Thomas Peters would have been a Black pioneer, and he would have assisted with going to Britain to try to get the land that was promised to the Black Loyalists. He took 2 trips, both were unsuccessful. He did petition as hard as he could to attempt to get the promises that were made by the British before they left to go to Sierra Leone in 1792. Thomas Peters, his descendant is Juanita Peters, and she's in the community of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and she operates and is the executive director of Africville, which has its own story of land displacement and community displacement as well. So in 1792, the screen is there, and it shows some ships. There was an offer by the Sierra Leone company to, I guess, have Blacks that were not happy to sign up to take those 15 ships that went back or went to Africa, to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone was I believe, a British colony at the time, and so that would have been part of the reason why. But historians are still looking to find out as to why the decision to go to Sierra Leone. It could have been a multiple of things, definitely, in the community that would have taken place. The information I have is that the majority of those that left, which was 1/3 of the 3,000 Black Loyalists who were in Shelburne and Birchtown, approximately 1/3 of them decided to leave. The majority were Christians, and the majority were also those who had a skilled trade to take with them to Sierra Leone. And so they actually left the port of Halifax on 15 ships in January of 1792. It took them approximately 3 months They landed in Sierra Leone in March. Uh, and not all of them made it. Of course, there were about 65 to 69 of the Black Loyalists who didn't make it on those ships. So I always say if the waters could talk, no matter what, any water that you're facing, any opportunity you get to put your feet in the water or your hands in the water, no matter where you are, it would have you believe that there is a story to be told. The majority of locations on the map with the 52 communities are all along the waterfront. It made it easier, of course, including in Africa, for the slave ships to export the Africans when they were closer to the water line. And so if you take a look at maps, you'll see that that's where the majority of the Black communities would be, even in Nova Scotia. And it of course, being in those areas, including Birchtown, um, it's the most unnavigable arm of any water due to the rocks and due to the fact that ships cannot get in, and people cannot always get out. So there's some intent, I believe, some purpose as to why these locations are closer to the water's edge. And I said, if the waters could talk, definitely they would have quite a story to tell. So I'm not sure if you can see the next image there, but I cannot see it on the screen, but there should be a map which outlines, this is a bit of an older map. There are 52 distinct communities. The first communities outlined are actually Shelburne and Birchtown, which are the two distinct communities in one. And so as I was saying to you, when the race riots occurred in 1784, and the Black Loyalists for 10 days were pushed to Birchtown. Birchtown became the motherland, the home for a lot of Black families, including my own ancestors. And so from that, I'm so privileged every day to get to work and go to work as the executive director of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center in Birchtown, and to be able to share that story with everyone. There are also a large cluster on the map that would show that Halifax was quite developed as well. Again, Shelburne, 1783, Halifax more after the War of 1812. But as you can see, there is a large cluster of distinct communities all throughout Nova Scotia. And a lot of this definitely needs to be put into a form of education so that, all the students and teachers and everyone gets an opportunity to actually understand that story as well. So I'm going to go on to the next slide just to see here. I'm not sure if it just moves into 1989. So if it doesn't,
Yes.
I'll continue. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to continue to tell you. So I've got some papers I'm rustling around here. So I'm just going to go on to tell you just a little bit about 1989. I know it's gone, and I just want to say that between where I left off, 1792 and 1989 is quite a significant amount of time. And so what we're doing is historians have been looking into that information to try to figure out where those pieces are missing, where the breakdown is. I was born in Shelburne. I work in Birchtown. But a lot of that story after the Exodus to Sierra Leone is not talked about and it's not researched. And so part of the work that we're actually doing at the Black Loyalist Heritage Society is to kind of fill in those gaps. So this year is our 10th year anniversary of the opening of the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. And it's quite a, what's the word called? It's quite a triumph for us to have that beautiful center that we have. And there is going to be a picture of it coming up in the next slides, to have that beautiful center, open, to the public, and have as many visitors, maybe 50, 60,000 visitors a year actually come through, which is quite an interesting thing for us there. So in 1989, there was a group called the Shelburne County Cultural Awareness Society. And that society was made up of a a small group of Black women and men in the community who wanted to hold on to the story, preserve the story, foster the story of the Black Loyalists. And so they formed this particular cultural awareness society. And eventually, this would become to be known as the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. And the society was established to research and share genealogical history of the Black Loyalists, descendants in the Shelburne area, to continue that work and also to help build up that storytelling as well, those untold stories and lost stories that were not told. In our community, we have elders in the community who we are losing at rapid speed. Every year, I would say there would be 2 or 3 elders in the community who have passed on, and with that, some of their stories have passed with them. The community is still a healing community. There is still trauma, which is both present and generational, and that gets passed down to descendants. So being a descendant of Generation 1 from 1783, part of the work that I'm doing as a executive director and as a leader in the community is to share those stories and talk about those stories. We know that trauma is something that is still being dealt with, but we try to do that by talking to each other. There are several members who are still in the community that actually made up part of the society, which is great. I get to see them on a regular basis and get to hear their stories. I recently just did a project with with TNA, the National Archives out of the UK, in which we had descendants sit down and share their story on the Black Loyalist story and the Black Loyalist history. So that was done quite well, and that's for the USA 250 for, of course, next year, I believe it is. So just beautiful stuff and beautiful work that we're actually doing. On the next slide, I'm going to move from 1989 to the 1990s. And if you could take a look at the image there, this is a picture of our old schoolhouse. So between 1994, and it is on site, it's part of one of the buildings on site. But between 1994 and 1997, the Black Loyalist Heritage Society acquired several properties in Birchtown to create a heritage site and a museum complex. And it included the first image, which I showed you as being the Black burial ground. And that was designated as a historic site by Parks Canada in 1996. So we have these beautiful pieces of our site that when you go to those sites, you can feel the spirituality of the ancestors that are there. The Black burial ground is one that is of significance to us because you could see actually out to the lighthouse, which is quite an important thing. The lighthouse would have been in Shelburne Harbor to help guide the ships home. And so I'm quite sure that as being, that was an emotional place where the Black Loyalists would have memorialized their family members. There have been found to be no human remains at the Black burial ground. We do call it that because we know that that's where the Black Loyalists would have gone to have peace with anyone that they would have lost in the community. The image here, which is the old schoolhouse. It was built in 1835 and was active as a school until about 1961. It is a provincial heritage site, which is pretty cool. And I say that because it is an old building. We recently had it restored. Of course, we had to hire a certified renovator in historical sites. And so we had that done with the fund that we had received or grant we had received. And so it is a beautiful building. It sits really, really nicely. A couple of things about the school, which I don't have a picture of the inside. There are 2 entrances or 2 exits, however you look at it. One was for the boys and one was for the girls. A lot of people thought that maybe one entrance or exit was for the Black students and one for the white students. This school holds a significant recognition for us in the community. And I say that because 2 weeks ago, I went to Halifax, which is about 2.5 hours from where I live, and picked up an award that we had won from the National Historical Society of Canada regarding Black education in Nova Scotia. This school was one of very few schools that had integrated students back in 1945, 44, 45. So because of that, we received a beautiful recognition. It was quite prestigious for us to get that award, recognizing the work that was done into the community in terms of integrated classrooms. So very, very, very proud about that. So I'm just trying to see the next. I don't have an image of St. Paul's Anglican Church. So before I move on to the next image, I would just like to let you know that St. Paul's Anglican Church is another site that we have, another building we have on site, and it was built between 1888 and 1905. And it was in use until about the 1980s. It did become deconsecrated as a church, I believe, shortly after that. We still use the church for weddings, for special events, for any type of ceremony. We even allow it out to other churches to use on Sundays, but we do not have a regular church service at that particular old church that we have on site. And it was once known as the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And so religion was quite a big deal for the Black Loyalists as well. That would be a whole other topic for me to talk to you about, but it's religion was something that the Black Loyalists held on to, grasping onto it because it was one of the few things that they knew could not be taken away. Religion is empowered, it's deep. But the issues with religion in Nova Scotia with the Black Loyalists is just the fact of just not feeling welcomed and having to sit in a different area of the church in the pews which are very cramped. So the Black Loyalists had very little freedoms even within their churches as well. And because they were religious people, they like to chant, they like to dance, maybe have a drink, whatever it is, and that was known as frolicking. And so Shelburne itself, Shelburne, Nova Scotia, put a law into effect citing no Negro frolicking. Anyone that was found to be frolicking would have been charged and put into a poorhouse and had to serve their time in a poorhouse if they were found to be drinking and enjoying themselves in the town of Shelburne. So that's just how extreme some of the laws were against, the Black Loyalists, for sure. Okay, so I think we can move on. Does this one say 2006?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in 2006, there was an arson that took place at the Black Loyalists old museum, not the one that we're at right now, but the one that was existent at the time. And as a result of that, the building burned to the ground. You can see in this image the destruction that took place in 2006. In the picture, there are three Black men. The man in the middle is Mayor Stanley Jacklin. He is our first Black mayor in 241 years in the town of Shelburne. He is also an 8th generation descendant, like myself, of the Black Loyalists. So we're very proud of the work that he has done in the community to become and make history again, historically, as the first Black mayor. That's quite a big deal. He would have been present at that time. The other two men were actually members of the community. The man in the forefront with the glasses, he would have been married to the founder of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. Her name was Elizabeth Cromwell. She has since passed away, as well as him. I have a real connection to Elizabeth Cromwell that I'll share with you if I have time. But yes, he was definitely a gentleman in the community, a man in the community that actually was very proud of our history. The gentleman in the front is kind of faded. That gentleman is Tommy Jacklin. He is a family member of mine. He's also a firefighter as well in the town of Shelburne. currently, and Halifax. And when that building burned, it was quite a shock to the community, more trauma, as we felt as though the trauma was ending or coming out of it. 2006, this happens. The person responsible for this fire was never brought to justice. And as a result of that, the trauma continues. The fact that there's no closure to this particular incident does not sit very well with the Black community. The person that was responsible for this was already in trouble in the community. Plus, there was no video footage of that person actually performing the arson. And as a result, those charges were dropped. Today, I have 18 cameras on site that I get to see myself from my phone. So I check the site with those cameras, which again, remotely, I have access to check. And then another reason that I continue to check too is because I don't know if you know this, but last year there was a series of fires in Nova Scotia. And Barrington Lake, if you ever want to look it up, Barrington Lake was one of the biggest fires that we've had in the history of Nova Scotia. And that fire came so close to the Black Loyalist Heritage Center that I had to shut down operations for 2 weeks. And staff were told to go home. And we waited it out. We hoped the wind would change or it would rain, whatever the situation was. And very luckily, nothing happened. And so that was great, to hear. But I still kept an eye on the place. And I also continued to do work in the community to help others that were dealing with the fires. And so the trauma, it just continues. And so we, of course, talked about it. We had opportunity to sit down, have a meal, a gathering, so that we could talk about, what is going on in our community. And it affected my staff, quite seriously. And so I took that as well seriously and just made sure that they were doing okay and that we had a coping mechanism, for my staff as well as myself and as well as the community. So that was important to us that we jumped in to get that done. So I'm just going to see, I can go to the next slide. I think I might be done. Does that say 2015?
Yes.
Okay, good. So here we go. Let's jump forward again. All of these years that I'm putting you guys and leaving gaps in there. I would like to offer you, Alicia, at any time, the virtual tour, which we can, I can send to you to have the members present to actually take a look at it for a while. It's a virtual tour that is done by one of the descendants of the Black Loyalists, and it's virtual. So you don't have to leave your room. You can actually watch it. It's about 35 to 38 minutes long, and it actually gives you an idea of the inside of the center as well as the outside of the center as well. So please let me know if that's something that I can offer the group for you to watch. It is a specific amount of time, so I could lend it out to you for a week or however long it is that you need to share it. But it's actually quite powerful as well because it is done by a descendant of the Black Loyalists, which is, of course, always amazing when that work gets done. So here you see on this image is a photograph of the center. That's a beautiful one. This probably was in the summer. It is the image itself, it just depicts the fact of strength, resiliency, beauty, ingenuity. I can see all kinds of, things that when I look at this, it's got a beautiful windows in front of, you can see the windows that are in the front there that are facing the street. The windows have the names of all the African, the 3,000 Black Loyalists who arrived in Canada or in Nova Scotia. So their names are depicted throughout the center. So we have a thing called Say Their Name. And we make sure that when we come to work every day that we say their name. We say one or two or three, and we remember, who they are, and that we will never forget, their story as we build our own story. As a person who has inherited, as a descendant who has inherited the Black Loyalist story, my job at this generation is to ensure that the next generations after me have what they need. I've been with the center for 3 years. I did leave to go to Ontario, and I worked in Ontario for 31 years. I came home back to Nova Scotia. I've been home about 3 years. And the digitization of the work that we're doing at the center has been phenomenal. So much so that we've actually created a project that we call the Black Loyalist Family Research Center. We digitized over 16,000 documents with names, with church records, minutes, everything that we have is actually digitized, which is great. It's a lot of work because we want to make sure that if fire does happen or destruction or anything does happen, that we have that information digitized and saved. So that was a big project that we did through funding that we received from the Nova Scotia government. To date, and this is an old number here, it says we have welcomed over 40,000 visitors. I'm going to suggest it's way more than that, maybe triple that since 2015. And we pride ourselves on our programs that we do there. We pride ourselves on the staff that we have there. The majority of staff that are there are descendants, as well as the majority of board members of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society are also descendants as well. So I'm not really sure what my time is like. Anna, am I good for time?
You're good for time. You could probably go for another 5.
Okay. All right, great. That's good to know. So I would just like to say that quickly, I'm just looking through my.
We can take questions too. You're actually
Okay.
right on time. So.
Okay, great. That's great. Great. I would like to say just very quickly that I did promise you a little personal story about myself. So I don't want to give you my age, but I'm I'm not even going to give you numbers to work with because I know some people are trying to figure it out right now. But when I was about 5, maybe 6 years old, my family were placed in foster care. And it's okay because I can talk about it now. There were 6 of us and we were divided up due to family circumstances. And so the lady that was the social worker in the community was the woman I mentioned earlier. Her name was Elizabeth Cromwell. She was the founder of the Black Loyalist Heritage, the Cultural Awareness Society, and then the Black Loyalist Heritage Society. She was a Black social worker in the community. And I remember her holding me. She had to remove us from our the children. I remember her holding me in her arms. And I would have been about, as I was saying, 5 or 6, somewhere around that. And I'm just going to fast forward now. She has since passed away, but I am now leading the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. And so when there's a dark place within me, I go to that story and I think to myself, as others have told me, that she built that place for me to lead and to continue to promote and foster the story of the Black Loyalist Heritage Society and the community. So I get my strength from that to continue the work that I am doing in this field. There are 3 Black museums in Nova Scotia. It's the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. There is the Africville Museum, and there's the Black Cultural community as well, Black Cultural Center. And so we are sister museums, and we pride ourselves on going to each other for strength as being Black museums in Nova Scotia. There are 28 museums in Nova Scotia, and we are 3 of the strongest that they have. So with that, I will take any questions that you may have, and thank you for your time. And if there's any questions that you have, I'll definitely feel free to answer those.
Here is a interesting question. In the United States, the people who were loyal to the Crown were called Tories. Was that word used in Canada?
No. This is the first time I've heard this word. I have not heard this. We were Black Loyalists. There were Black Pioneers as well, which was a different regiment. There was also those that were called Jamaica Maroons as well, that were part of history. But no, I've not heard that before.
Yeah, it was often given a name given to people who didn't want to be loyal to the new revolution. They were still royalists. Also, in the States, the newly uncovered words that we would not normally sing in our national anthem. If I might quote, their blood has washed out their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. They're referring to those Africans that fought in the War of 1812 with the promise by the British that they would be given their freedom. Did any of those people go to Nova Scotia?
Yes, they did actually.
They were resettled.
Yes, actually they did. After the War of 1812, a lot did settle in the Halifax area. And so to hear those words, was quite compelling. And I believe in history, we have to remember the fact that 1783, when the Black Loyalists did arrive here, some of them also arrived as slaves to white families as well in this community here in Shelburne. And so with that being said, and as I stated earlier, with the free blacks and then the blacks that were enslaved, definitely harrowing times for them. But when you speak about 1812, it's a part of the history that we discuss when it comes to those that actually arrived in the Halifax area after that war. So it is quite compelling to hear. And the words, just to let you know that we have at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center, we have first generation, and then we have second generation who responds to first generation. So first generation would say, this is Birchtown, is this haven of freedom? And the second generation would say, this is Birchtown, is it haven of freedom? And there'd be a question mark. And so it kind of makes you feel like what actually is freedom, what was freedom when the blacks arrived here expecting that freedom, whether it was now or in after the War of 1812. It just makes the next generation think, do we have freedoms today? So that's very interesting and very powerful words that you just mentioned. Unbelievable. The history still connects no matter what. Shelburne and Birchtown had the largest Black settlement in the world outside of Africa in 1783. Today, the largest Black population is in Halifax, which would have come as a result of the War of 1812. So just small things that not to be forgotten of the small community that, resides here. And I sometimes find myself correcting those that are in the larger communities, because there's about 1,700 people where I live in Shelburne. So it's not a big place, but you go to Halifax, it's a metropolis. And so I do find myself correcting them when they talk about having the largest Black communities where we once did. So that part is not forgotten. So that's very powerful words. Thank you.
Referencing back to that map that you were showing of the various sites and towns, were all of those Black towns and if you're nodding yes, so that's interesting. Were any of those subject to what I call purposeful destruction or gentrification?
Yes, a lot of those 52 communities, all of them would have been touched by Black families, Black people at some point. Some of those communities, when you go to them, they actually have signs that are on the outskirts of those communities that say a Black Loyalist community or a Black heritage community since 1783 or whatever year it was. There's this big thing, that we speak about displacement, and just the fact that if Blacks stayed there, what was there for them? What did they build? What type of community do they have? A lot of them have moved on. And I must say, part of the reason is because of racial blending. So there's a lot of racial blending that has taken place in a lot of those communities. And what I mean by that is the mixture of whether it be white or Indigenous or other communities that have kind of, I wouldn't say wiped the face of the communities, but as maybe not allowed them to stay in those places for very long, just because everybody was always moving around. Everybody was always trying to find what works best for them. So when the Black Loyalists left here in Shelburne in 1792, when they had signed up to go to Halifax, a lot of them went around some of those communities. And what they ended up doing is they ended up staying. And so there are more Black Loyalist communities, I believe, on that map than people would probably tend to believe, just because they did leave here and they did go to some of those communities that are on that map, and they did stay there. And in terms of, land entitlements or land displacement, that is still an argument today, where Black communities find themselves still trying to determine, land rights or land entitlement rights, including my own family as well. When we were settled here, a lot of the houses were torn down or assumed by other people. And in 1792, when the Black Loyalists did leave, to go to Sierra Leone, a lot of those places, that land was taken over, and Blacks just got up and left. And they actually should still have ownership to some of that land, or at least some of the rights of that land. So it is ongoing with land entitlements, but we are slowly getting there, along with reparations as well, in terms of that land or any opportunity to get what was theirs. So it's a great question. It's an amazing question. Those 52 provinces, 52 communities, very distinct and very noble, and we talk about them as much as we can. I haven't been to all 52. That is on my bucket list, is to hop in my car and and drive around and kind of introduce myself. And all of us, I did request last year that we try to have some type of summit or conference where we could get a representative from each of the communities to kind of tell us what's going on, and so that we can report back to the rest of Nova Scotia and the community in Canada to say we're still here, because nobody talks about all of those smaller places except Halifax. We call it HRM, Halifax Regional Municipality. Yeah, they've got quite a bit of money, whereas we have to kind of beg a little bit to get some things. Yeah, so I stand up quite a bit. I'm quite vocal about some of that stuff, but I also know that we have to work together as well, just to ensure that we all come out of this and we can continue to educate the ones coming below us, the ones coming after us.
And just a quick follow on, as the, sorry. Just as the executive director of the Loudoun Freedom Center, it is our honor to preserve and protect several burial grounds here in Loudoun County. So my question was, and I kind of wrote that down, I was alarmed when you said there was a burial ground, but no human remains.
Mm-hmm.
So was it a scatter garden, or what do you think, or why was it called a burial ground?
Yeah, we believe it was considered to be, and that's a great question. Thank you so much for that. About a year ago, just before I respond to the question, about a year ago, I was asked to sit in on a archaeologist. She was doing her PhD or her dissertation. And so because of the name Jupiter Farmer, who would have been generation 1 to me, 1783, that's quite a big deal. And so I said, absolutely, I'll sit in on that. And then, of course, I left after her professors had to grill her about other things. But she was talking about the fact that she did do the research and the work at that particular ground, and they found no human remains there. But it's a symbol or a symbolization of what the Black Loyalists would deem to believe, that there are no grave sites, there are no tombstones in the community of Shelburne that we could say recognizes all of the Black Loyalists who would have passed on here. If they are in the cemeteries, a lot of them would have been way in back of the woods, and it would have been with a wooden cross or maybe a stone in the ground. And so I believe the Black Loyalists didn't use that space to bury individuals, but it was a way for them to remember the ones that they did bury. And so that's why it's called a black burial ground, is because of this symbol of preservation of the story of the Black Loyalists. I did a little bit of work on cemeteries in Shelburne, and there are few and far between where there are actually headstones of our ancestors,
Yeah,
as we would have them
that
today.
here, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all right. I have two questions. One, can you explain the Book of Negroes? And the other one is, my family came from Barbados, and some of them came to the United States, and those ones that couldn't make it to the United States ended up not in Nova Scotia, but one of the islands up there. So how did the Barbadian immigrants integrate with the existing community that was there? Because they're both experienced racism, but you had different educational levels, because that happened in New York City. The Bayesians were much more educated than the people from down south, so they got often hired to do the more skilled labor and stuff. So two questions.
Yeah, that's thank you so much for that. So the Book of Negroes, I'm not sure if you've read the book or if you've seen the movie. If not, perhaps I could get a copy sent to one copy. I couldn't give you all a copy, but I could send out a copy that maybe could sit somewhere in the center where you are, in the library where you are, if you don't have it, as a gift from us at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center. So Lawrence Hill, who was the author of that book. It's a fictional story of a young Black girl, Aminata. Her story talks about her walking through the trails and being subjected to part of enslavement or slavery, and just seeing that as a young girl from her eyes, and how she has explained that, to the rest of the world. Lawrence Hill did and I've never met him. I've only spoken with him on the phone. And he says, "Don't call me Lawrence, you have to call me Larry." And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. My mother always said, Mr., Mrs., ma'am, and so it was very difficult to have that conversation with him, thinking Larry, 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 Larry. But anyways, the conversation with him regarding that book, it is a highlight of the names of the Black Loyalists through Sir Guy Carleton's papers with the British. A highlight of those names of the 3,000 Black Loyalists who actually arrived in Nova Scotia after the American Revolution. There are two versions of the Book of Negroes. One of them is in Washington. The American version is in Washington, and the other version is in Kew, England. And so the version that we have as a digitized version at the center is the British version. The British were really good at detail. They were really good at recording information. They were actually so good at it that sometimes their letters were so fancy that it actually changed the last names of some of the people that were in the book or the Carleton papers. And I speak about that with Jupiter Farmer, where the last name was Harmer with an H. But because of that actual cursive writing that the British were just so great at doing, it did change some of the names. And so with those two versions of that book, the version, again, like I said, we have at the Black Loyalist Heritage Center is the British version. And so what we've attempted to do is to repatriate that book, those Carleton papers. And what I mean by that, as you would know, is we have petitioned the English government, the British government, to bring the book home. The book needs to be out of Britain and into Birchtown, into Shelburne. And so we've started that project to repatriate. And then I had to stop in my heels because the Black Loyalist Heritage Center is part of the family of Nova Scotia museums. So the Nova Scotia government said, hold your horses. You can't do this. If you do this, that book or those papers must come to Nova Scotia Museum and not directly to the Black Loyalists. And so with that, it put me back a little bit because I was going after it thinking that we could get the papers and bring them and we could own them, but that wasn't the case. So you have to go through protocol, which is through the Nova Scotia, museums world. But we are still in the works of attempting to bring that book home. Part of the movie of the Book of Negroes was actually filmed in Birchtown. We have costumes that were given to us from the actors that were in the movie, the Book of Negroes. And all of the names that are contained in that book are the names that we have in our Black Loyalist Heritage Center, etched in our walls, in our images, in our minds, on the glass, under our glass floor. The story that we tell on our website as well talks about those names of those 3,000 Black Loyalists that would have arrived here to Nova Scotia after the American Revolution. So if you have not read the book, I do encourage you to read it if you can. And it's a piece of history. And I believe it should be taught in the schools. I believe it should be part of the curriculum in schools. It is spoken about in Shelburne. We have an ACS program, which is an African Canadian Studies program, but it's not talked about enough. I find that education today focuses a little too long on Africa itself, especially here in Nova Scotia, where the Black history was and is thriving. I find that we have to do a better job educationally just to ensure that those points hit home and not make it an elective, but make it mandatory for the education of the Black Loyalists be part of every day in all schools throughout the United States and Canada, as well as international. So I hope that helps a little bit with the book. I do have, okay, great. It's, I read it, I have it on my desk. I refer to it myself from time to time when I'm actually trying to find some information regarding that. In terms of Barbados, that is a great question. I don't have a lot of information about it, but I did write down the question. I would like to be able to get back to you on it. I really thought that my ancestor, William Daring, I had heard that he was Bajan. And I tried to search him up. I'm trying to find more out about William Daring, who would again be my great-great-grandfather in terms of his journey. And I haven't been able to find anything. So I may need to get back to you. I apologize on the Barbados question, but it definitely is one that is exploratory. And I'll get you an answer on that. And I can send it to Anna or to Alicia.
Right, no
okay. But it's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up.
Like the Canadian census where it has all the Bajans listed, as I can trace them from Barbados into, I think it was Cape Breton they went to. I don't think they went to Nova Scotia. But,
Cape Breton.
But if they're in the area, they could have, migrated to another island, something like that. So
Exactly. Thank you. And another project for me to work on. So thank you.
Andrea, I have a question before we close out. Any other questions? Okay, I'll ask, we've got about 3 or 4 questions. Okay, so I'll ask mine and then we'll go to anybody else. Or this is maybe a confirmation. So I read in the Cardinal newspaper, the same group you did with the podcast, and they wrote something about, there were about 900 loyalists, Black loyalists that came from Virginia, actually 900. So I wondered if you had seen that number or anything in your research. 900, about 900. So does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. And actually, Graham Nickerson, who was a local historian, actually also spoke about this as well. Our records do indicate that the largest majority of Black Loyalists came from Virginia. And we do have, that's a great
Carolina, Angela. You gotta do some more fact checking.
I know.
South Carolina, not Virginia. Yeah, South Carolina, Charleston, direct line.
Okay.
Got you.
Nancy.
We'll follow up. Quick question, do you still have close relations with Sierra Leone?
Yes, that's a great question. And thank you for the clarification. We're digitizing so many records and so much information that it made me actually think about a project to get money in regards to kind of definitively just kind of searching out and sussing out that information with South Carolina as well as Virginia and New Jersey, where Jupiter Farmer would have come from. So that's really great information. In terms of Sierra Leone, yes, I do have wonderful contact with Sierra Leone. We're actually working on a project with Sierra Leone, just in terms of history and connection. We're putting together an education piece that helps us to connect with them. I did have an opportunity about a year and a half ago to speak with Yvonne Sawyer, I believe at that time, who was the mayor of Sierra Leone. And that just happened as a fluke. When I was at the front, I was dealing with a person who had come in, and we were talking about our connection to Sierra Leone. And he said, "Hold on, I'll give the mayor a call." So he picked up his phone and he did a quick. I know, I was like, "Really?" And like, "You're going to do that?" And he had her on FaceTime, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, I wanted to take a picture of me being on FaceTime with her, just so that I could let everybody know that that hey, that I'm doing this call. And so we are very enthusiastic of making that connection. And that is another thing that's on my bucket list, is to actually go to Sierra Leone and find my family, find the families that are connected to us here. The biggest work for us right now is to connect with the United States. We feel like that is just so important to us, to connect to the United States. I have had a chance to go to Thomas Jefferson Museum. I went to Harriet Tubman Museum. I also went to the African American Smithsonian, and there was a small piece of information about Nova Scotia. It was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful museums. And no matter what is going on in the political landscape of today's world, our visitor base right now are Americans that are coming from the United States at this point in this time to ask us about Black history. And so I find that quite interesting, that they're coming to us as a source of information, whereas they may not be able to maybe get all of what they need. And so it's integral that we pay attention to that and understand that, this is wonderful. That people want to come to us in Nova Scotia and ask, do you have slavery? Did you have slavery? Do you have Black people? Do you have Loyalist people? And so I think the promotion of what we're doing is, and also through this opportunity, is becoming quite a big deal. And I'm so excited to be leading this part of the show with all of you guys, and with the history of the Black Loyalists and the Patriots, of course.
Okay, I think I saw 1, 2 more hands. Okay, Jennifer, and then we're going to close out and take a break. What's that?
Here.
Okay.
I think you kind of just answered my question. I wanted to find out, are there any people, I guess in Nova Scotia, that are interested in maybe descendants in the United States and vice versa?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why we've actually, and I can send this to you as well. So Alicia, whatever you need, I can send you a copy of our strategic report or our strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan. I'll get this. I'll mark all this down. The strategic plan. We have an education guide. I'll send you the education guide. These are documents that you can share, as well as our family Black Loyalist Family Research Project. I'll send you 3 documents so that you guys. I think it'll be great for us to start there, and I think we could have this wonderful conversation. And absolutely, we are always trying to, find out who we are. Because of Black Loyalists, our names were changed. And so a lot of the names when the Black Loyalists arrived were after those that owned them. And so when you think about it, we're still searching, myself included, still searching for our own identity. And I believe that we can get that from the United States. I really do feel that the records that are kept in the United States are stronger than the records that were kept here when they landed in 1783. And so we're still doing, a lot of that work to find those documents. Fires took place all over Nova Scotia after the Black Loyalists arrived, including when my generation 1, Jupiter and Venus Farmer, were destructed by fire in Port Mattoon. in 1783. Fire, fire, fire just seems to be that crisis that never gets looked after. And that's why it's such a trauma for us. But we're not giving up. Family, I think it was Family Search, I believe it was, an organization came to us last year and tried to connect with us as well to do some work with them. So we're not, and hopefully through this group here, as well with Rick Murphy and I've been to Pennsylvania, I think it was, not too long ago, a few years ago as well, to try to figure out some of that search as well. But as we finish off here, I just would like to say that one of the biggest projects that we're working on right now is the African Nova Scotian Seafarers Project. So what a lot of people don't know is that the Blacks, Africans, the Black Loyalists, their livelihood was through the waters and through fishing, right? And so as a result of that, we're actually putting together and launching a traveling exhibit, which I'm hoping I can allow it to come to the United States, on our African Nova Scotia seafarers, our men who went out and braved the waters, and our men who owned fishing boats at a time when Black people did not. And so we have that beautiful story that we get to tell, as well as the number 2 construction battalion. I'm not sure if you've heard of those men from World War I that were not permitted to fight because it was a white man's war, or deemed to be a white man's war. In 1916, over 800 signed up. And although most of them did wear the uniform, they were not allowed to carry weapons or guns. They actually were using shovels, or with the forestry unit or another unit. Very sad story. I will send you information on that, because we just installed our war monument. Our memorial was installed October the 10th, and it sits right at the cenotaph in the town of Shelburne, where I was born, and we will be recognizing those heroes along with everyone else from the various wars. So we're getting things done slowly but surely, and the recognition that we're putting forth is all part of our strategic plan.
Wow, well, we're excited.
Good. Well, thank you. That's yeah,
I'm
thank
ready
you.
to come and visit. I'm ready to come and visit. So we're